Welcome techies. In this video we are going to build this unit converter using Python and Tkinter. Before we get into the video, let me show you how this works. So we have length and temperature for now, but by the time we are done with the video you will see that it's easy for you to add other units. Well, so let's test what we have so far. Right, and then if I type this, as you can see, you can also add a float. For example, you can change this to Kelvin, temperature Kelvin, for example, convert from Kelvin to whatever, convert from Fahrenheit to this. You can also change this as well, and it works all fine. So that's what we're going to be building, and let's get straight into it. Okay, we're going to start by building the UI. So if you don't have customtkinter installed, run this command to get it installed. Now we have our base window set up. You can pause during the video to make sure you type along. So let's see what we have so far. I'm going to run Python unit converter, and let's drag that in. Alright, so this looks good. So next up, we're going to create a menu, the menu we saw earlier on, and then give it a range of values. So we need to set our default value for that field, and you do that by calling .set. And now we're going to show it by using the pack. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so this is coming together. Now let's see. Okay, yeah, we can change that as well. So let's move on. And we're going to also create a frame to hold the menu for the from rate and then to the to rate. That's the rate we want to convert from and the rate we want to convert to. So we're going to do that the same way we did the units menu. And now we're also going to create a frame to hold the user's inputs and then the output. So we're just going to use entry boxes for that. They're just normal Tkinter widgets. And we're also going to create that error label we saw at the bottom earlier in the video. So all you need to do is just use a label and then change the color to red. You need to increase the font size, and that should do. I think that's all so far for the UI. Now let's run this and see what we have. Oh, cool. Now as you can see, we get this CTK option menu because we did not set default values for this, but would handle that when we start building the logic of this game. We would populate that with whatever the user chooses in the units menu. But let's add hello to see what this looks like here to make sure that works fine. And yeah, so it works. That's it at the bottom there. So yeah, let's move on. Okay, so to the actual part of the logic. So the way this is going to work is we're going to have a dictionary with length, as you can see, and then we're going to have meter. So this meter on the left is going to represent the unit the user wants to convert from, and then we're going to use the idea of conversion factors. And the way that will work is, say you have 5 meters, and if you want to convert that to kilometers, we know that you need to multiply that by 0.001. So no matter what number you enter, all you need to do is just multiply it by that conversion factor to get your answer in kilometers. The same thing applies to centimeter times 100, in this case, and millimeters. So that's the idea. So even if a user chooses other units like, let's say, kilometers and centimeters, we can see all you need to do is just put the conversion factors in this dictionary. And but how you might have the question, you might have this in mind, that how do we achieve the conversion by just doing this? So what we'll do is, whenever a user chooses a rate they want to convert from and the rate they want to convert to, so we're going to get the value of the from rate from the left side of this dictionary. So whenever we get that, it means we know what the user wants to convert from, and then we're going to pick the value of the to rates in the other side of this dictionary, which is the value or whatever they might have chosen from the from rate. So say they chose meter from the from, and then to their to they chose centimeters. So we are going to get the value of meter, which is this dictionary, and then get the conversion rate of centimeter. And then when we do that, so we're going to multiply that number, which is 100, times whatever number they give us, and that's how we're going to do the conversion. So it's also similar to how we're going to deal with temperatures, except that with the temperatures, we're not going to have some sort of conversion factor. We're going to make use of functions to do that. Yeah, so the way this is going to work is also similar. Whenever the user chooses the temperature they want to convert from, let's say they choose Celsius in this case, and then their to is, it will be either Fahrenheit or Celsius. It could also Fahrenheit or Kelvin. It could also be Celsius, but they would not need to do conversion in that case. So let's say they chose Fahrenheit, from Celsius to Fahrenheit. We're going to get the Celsius from this temperature, which will give us this object here containing Fahrenheit and Kelvin. So it depends on whatever the user wants to convert to. Say they chose Fahrenheit, then we'll get the function of the Fahrenheit, and then we're going to call that function with whatever value the user passes. Now, the same thing applies to other units here. That's the Fahrenheit and the Kelvin. So now we're going to create one extra dictionary here. We're going to see the use of that. It's not a need, but it actually makes things easier to understand. So what this will hold is the different units we have. So we have the length unit, and we also have the temperature unit. And the way this is going to work is whenever a user chooses length, we are going to make use of this length dictionary and then the length converter function. We're going to define that in a minute. So the idea behind this is, since the length and temperature does their conversion in a kind of different way, we want to be able to handle that without having too much code. So you are going to see the usefulness of this. So we need to define these functions here. Then I have a file created here already called temp converters. You can create it as well, as you can see it on the side. I might put these files into a folder by the end of this video. So we're going to define our Celsius to Fahrenheit function, and I picked this from a website. Okay, so the formula, you don't have to worry too much about it. You just need to do these multiplications and the divisions and then return your value. So we're going to do the same thing for Celsius to Kelvin and Fahrenheit to Celsius. So you're just basically interpreting the formulas we have on this website with code. It's the same thing for everything, so I'm just going to put everything down there. You can pause to type this out, and also the link is in the description below, so you can just go to my GitHub and copy that part. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, let's define this length converter function. And then the way this will work is, remember, all we need to do is get the user's value, get the rate they want to convert from, which is our initial here, and then the final, which is the rate they want to convert to. And to convert, we are going to get the value at the index of the initial, and then we're going to get the conversion factor. That's the one at the final, and then we're going to multiply all of that with the value. We're also going to do something similar to the temperature converter. Here we're going to get the initial from the temperature. Let's say we want to convert from Celsius. The initial here will be Celsius. Let's see, and the final here, let's say you want to convert from Celsius to Kelvin. Then the final will be Kelvin, which will return the Celsius to Kelvin function. And then we're going to call that function and whatever value the user passes. Okay, so that's all for the conversion part of this code. Now let's move on to populating the values for the initial and then the final rate drop down. So all we're going to do is create a function to do that. We're going to get whatever the user has chosen from the units menu drop down. As you can see, we're going to be making use of the units converter dictionary here, and then we're going to get whatever the user might have chosen from the units menu and get the dictionary for that. So that's the usefulness of the units converter. So when we do that, we also want to get the unit for the drop down for that particular unit. So in this case, for example, let's say the user chose length, then we're going to get the keys for length, which are meter, kilometer, and centimeter. Then we're going to add those to the rates drop down and set the first value of each unit to be the default values here, so we don't have that CTK option menu text as we did earlier on. Now let's run this and see what we have. Okay, so if you are not experiencing this, if you are not using Sublime, well, if you do, what you have to do is just let me drag this up a bit. All you have to do is just select all, Control A, and then convert indentation to spaces, and then I'm going to expand that and save. All right, so let's run this and see what we have so far. Oh, okay, yes, so we need to import our temperature converters. Cool. Let's run our app. It should work now. Let's drag this. Oh, okay. So it doesn't work. All right, so all we need to do is we need to call this function. We forgot to do that, and let's do that at the bottom here. So when we're done with creating our widgets, we're going to call that function to populate those values. And let's rerun this. I'm going to do Ctrl+C to cancel and then run it again. All right, so we have our values as expected. Cool. Okay, now that works, I've cleared my terminal here, and at the beginning of the video, you must have noticed this, that whenever I change from length to temperature, that is changed between those units, also the drop down values changed. So we're going to do that here with this units menu callback. We're going to call the set drop down values in it. So let me run the function so you can see that. I'm going to drag that in. Okay. Okay, all right, so we forgot to add the units menu callback to the widget itself. So let's configure that with the command. So the choice parameter we saw over there, okay, so that works, I guess. Yeah, it works. So the choice parameter we saw over there is just going to be either length or temperature from the whatever value we choose. Now let's handle whenever the user presses values in the box. So we're going to use that with what we call binding. So whenever a user presses a number and remove their hand from their keyboard or their keypad, it automatically triggers whatever function you put in front. So that's what the binding does. We're going to create a function for that, the convert. We don't have a function for that yet. So let's do that at the top. And then it takes in a default argument because this is a bind event. The first thing we're going to do here is to get the user's input. So but we're going to do that in a try except, and you see why in a bit. Strip the spaces around the user's text. Then we're going to check if it's an empty input. If it is, we're going to clear the boxes, both the input and the output boxes. We'll get to that function now. And basically what the function does is just delete whatever we have there from the beginning of the box to the end. So that's what that means. Now that we've done that, we're going to try to convert the user's input to a float. But what if the user has entered alphabet? So that will give us what we call a value error. And then if that should happen, we would configure our error label. Remember we created that earlier to say please enter a number instead. Then that should undo that for us. And after that, we're going to get the initial and the final rate. That's the read user wants to convert from and the read wants to convert to. Remember we talked about this earlier on when we were creating dictionaries. What if a user enters the same value, the same rate? So if they enter the same initial and the final rate, all we need to do is just return our value as a result. But for now, we'll store it in a variable called results, and else we're going to convert it. Now this is where we see the true value of our units converter dictionary. What this does is it gets whatever the user might have chosen from the units menu, which could be either length or temperature, and then gets the value from our units converter dictionary. So remember, our units converter dictionary is going to return the dictionary containing the conversion factors and then the function that does the conversion. So when we do that, we're going to get the function that does the conversion. And then we're going to call it converter and pass in our value, initial and final there. So that should be our result, and then we're going to update our conversion output, which is with our result. Okay, so we're going to run this to make sure it works fine. And okay, so let's input some values. I'm going to change the kilometer here. Okay, so that works fine so far. Okay, now there's an issue whenever I press the backspace and there's an empty string. So we're getting this error because of the parameter I passed in the function, and that's because if you check the function up here, we have a choice, but I'm going to pass none for now. The reason for that is if we scroll down, that we're also going to be calling that same function whenever we change our from rate and in our to rate as we have here. So and those passing a default argument of choice of whatever choice you pick. So we're going to leave that for now, even though we're going to add those here later on. All right, so I think that should work fine with the none. And let's run our app again to see. Let's Ctrl-C to stop that, and let's run it again to make sure it works. And so okay, that's fine. If we change that, you can also input values, it still works fine. Let's change the temperature. Okay, that gets updated. So apparently everything is working fine now. Even if you enter empty strings there, it will don't work. So you can try that as well. Let's run our app and see how our error label works. So in this case now, if I type in alphabets, we get the error label. But when we clear our text, we still have the errors there. So we want to make sure we clear that whenever we input just numbers. So let's cancel that and do that. And all we have to do is whenever we've checked for all of those errors, we just clear the text to an empty string. Okay, so let's see what our app looks like. Now if we put in wrong value and then we clear that, it should clear the input, which works fine. Cool. So we're going to cancel that. Now let's also cross-check that with our temperature, so it also works fine with the other unit as well. All right. And also there's one thing, this clear entry text. If you run our app right now, whenever we input numbers and then we change our units, that's meant to convert the units immediately or clear the input. So what we're going to do is clear inputs instead, and then we're going to do it by adding that function as a command to the from and then to the to rate. So that should clear the input box whenever we change our initial rate and then the rate you are converting to, that's from rate. So now if you should type in some numbers and then change it, that should clear our input here. So that works fine. Doesn't work for the upper unit up here, that's the length and temperature. So we need to add the function as a callback to that as well. But we have a callback for the units menu, so we're just going to call that function inside the units menu callback, just beneath that. Okay, so we'll copy that down there and call the function with none. Yeah, because the function takes in a default argument because it's a callback function, but we're not using it as a callback here, so we just need to put none to make sure it works. Now let's run our app to see what we have so far. I think everything should all work now. So if you input numbers, we change, it should reset. Also, if you change the temperature, everything should reset. Fine. Okay, that works cool as well. So all you need to work essentially. Let's check through. Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job with this. And for this as well, the code is going to be in the description below. You can always check that out. Alright guys, that's it for this video. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop them down in the comment section. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.